Hey, welcome to the briefing. What I'm going to cover with you today is this: navigate obstacles rapidly in manufacturing. The building was unavailable. The people were not automatically unavailable. Those are two different operating facts, and I want to start there because manufacturing leaders can get themselves into trouble when those two facts collapse into one conclusion. A machine can be unavailable, a line can be unavailable, a work center can be unavailable. An entire facility can be unavailable. That does not automatically mean every person, every skill, every productive hour, every material option, every planning option, or every operating path connected to that facility disappeared with it. Sometimes everything really does have to stop. Sometimes the safest and most responsible decision is to shut the operation down, protect people, protect quality, protect the equipment, and wait until the affected capability can be restored. That is a legitimate decision. But sometimes the obstacle owns one part of the operation and leadership quietly hands it ownership of everything else. On July 27th, severe weather moved through eastern Wisconsin. The Appleton area experienced major storm damage, including a confirmed tornado, and power interruptions became part of the broader regional disruption. Wisconsin declared a state of emergency the following day as communities dealt with tornado damage, high winds, utility disruption, and other storm effects. Pierce Manufacturing was operating inside that environment. Based on what Pierce publicly reported, a power outage temporarily interrupted operations at one Pierce Manufacturing facility. Pierce also said production team members were redirected to other Pierce facilities until power was restored. That is the part I care about, not because we know everything Pierce did internally. We do not. The public information does not tell us which employees went to which facilities. It does not tell us exactly what work they performed when they got there. It does not establish that complete work orders were transferred. It does not tell us how much production was recovered because people moved. And it does not give us Pierce's internal decision process. So I am not going to fill those gaps because it makes the story cleaner. We do not need to. What we know is enough. One manufacturing facility lost an operating dependency. Production there was interrupted. Pierce had other facilities. Production team members were redirected while restoration continued. The obstacle remained real. The people did not necessarily have to remain trapped behind it. That is the operating distinction. Manufacturing naturally creates dependencies. That is not a flaw. That is how controlled production works. People, tooling, quality controls, utilities, material, maintenance, and inspection all sit inside defined production relationships. That structure creates control, but the same structure can create a mental trap. We start treating the path as though the path is the objective. A person works in Building A, so if Building A is unavailable, that person becomes unavailable. A product normally runs on Line 3, so if Line 3 goes down, the product becomes unavailable. A material or quality dependency gets blocked, so leadership starts talking like the whole schedule has nowhere else to go. Sometimes that conclusion is correct, but if you never challenge the assumption, you do not actually know that. You are accepting the original design of the system as though the original design is the only possible operating route. That is where dependency turns into captivity. And I want to be careful with that because I am not telling you to start throwing people, work, material, tooling, and production around every time something gets inconvenient. No, that is not obstacle redirection. That is chaos with a scheduling meeting attached to it. Manufacturing is not Lego blocks. You do not pick up a process, carry it across the floor, snap it into some open space, and say there, problem solved. Capability is not automatically interchangeable because two facilities have the same company logo on the building. A qualified operator may not be qualified on another process. The other facility may not have the tooling, material, work instructions, measurement system, or capacity to absorb the move. It may already be protecting its own customer-critical schedule. So redirection without control is not leadership. It is moving the mess. The first question is not, the building went down, where can I send everybody? The first question is, what exactly went down? And that sounds simple. It is not. When pressure hits a plant, people summarize aggressively because they need to communicate quickly. Production is down. The line is down. The plant is down. We cannot run. We cannot ship. We cannot do anything until power comes back. Those statements may be useful for 30 seconds. The problem begins when the summary becomes the decision. The plant is down. Okay. Which part? Which capability? Which work center? Which people? Which materials? Which controls? Which customer commitments? What is actually unavailable? And what are you treating as unavailable because it happens to be connected to the thing that failed? That is a different read. Pierce gives us a clean, real-world example because the public record establishes one important separation. A facility had a power interruption. The production team still represented capability. Pierce redirected production team members to other Pierce facilities while restoration continued. That does not mean the obstacle disappeared. It means the company did not automatically allow the obstacle to define the status of every resource attached to it. That is what I want you to recognize. Because under pressure, the natural response is to stare at the failure point. Power goes out, everybody wants power back. Machine goes down, everybody wants maintenance. Material does not arrive, everybody wants the material. I understand that. The obstacle needs ownership. The mistake is allowing the obstacle to consume the entire operating conversation. Everybody is asking, how fast can we fix this? But nobody is asking, what does this actually have to stop? Those are not the same question. Let me put you into an illustrative manufacturing situation. I am not telling you this happened inside Pierce. It is simply the same type of operating pressure. You are the plant manager. One building loses power after severe weather. The utility does not have a firm restoration time yet. Maintenance has done what it can safely do internally. Production control knows the schedule is exposed. Supervisors have people available. Customer service wants to know which orders are at risk. Quality is correctly reminding everybody that moving work does not automatically move authorization. Another company facility 40 minutes away is operating normally. Your first instinct is simple. Wait, get power restored, restart the building, recover the schedule from there. And look, that feels responsible. The operation stays inside its normal configuration. Nobody has to coordinate another facility or work through qualifications, tooling, travel, supervision, capacity, and quality controls. Waiting is administratively clean. The obstacle is visible. The cause is external. Everybody knows what success looks like, and power comes back, building comes back, production resumes. Great. Except there is still a question sitting there. What if the people are not the thing that is down? That is where the read starts changing. You may have trained employees who are still available. You may have another facility with legitimate needs. There may be preparation, kitting, material handling, subassembly, documentation, maintenance support, training, or other productive work that does not have to remain attached to that powerless building. I am deliberately saying may because this is where leaders take a useful concept and turn it into a bad command. Obstacle redirection does not mean another path always exists. It means you stop assuming the current path is the only path before you have checked. And if another path does exist, now you have another question. Can you use it without damaging something else? Can the receiving facility absorb additional people? Are those people actually are they qualified for the work available there? Do the work instructions and quality requirements match? Does production control understand the change? Does the move interfere with the receiving facility's schedule or create new supervision, safety, or capacity problems? And here is one I really want you to think about. Are you moving capability or are you moving bodies because management feels better when everybody looks busy? Because those are not the same thing. A manufacturing leader can create a tremendous amount of activity with almost no operating value. People are busy, so leadership feels like something useful is happening. Apparently, motion got promoted to output. No, busy is not the objective. Useful capability applied to the right work under control is the objective. That is why the Pierce case is useful without exaggerating it. The public statement is enough. One facility had an interruption. Production team members were redirected. That tells us the company did not treat employee capability as permanently welded to one unavailable location. The building was constrained. The people were not automatically constrained in exactly the same way. That separation is the lesson. Now think about what happens when leaders miss it. A facility goes down, so everybody waits. At first that may look harmless. Maybe restoration takes an hour, then an hour becomes 3, 3 becomes the shift. Now the production plan starts slipping. Customer critical work gets closer to the edge. Production control starts rebuilding tomorrow around today's loss. Supervisors start discussing overtime. Downstream operations begin waiting. Shipping loses confidence in what will be ready. And customer service has to decide what it can responsibly tell the customer. Maintenance may still be pressured to accelerate restoration, even when the controlling failure sits outside its authority. Apparently, the utility grid reports to maintenance now. That is the kind of thinking that quietly transfers frustration onto the people with the least control over the actual failure. And then power comes back, and somebody says, "Good, we will just make it all back." Apparently, yesterday's lost hours were sitting in a reserve tank. That sentence bothers me because the lost hours did not disappear when the lights came back on. They moved. Now they are tomorrow's overtime, a compressed maintenance window, an overloaded shift, and that can become a quality risk if speed becomes the only recovery objective. What looked like one facility problem becomes a planning, labor, and customer problem. The original obstacle owned one facility. Then the consequences reached into tomorrow because the rest of the system sat behind it. Now I want to be fair here. That does not mean redirection would have eliminated those consequences. We cannot say that. Sometimes there is nothing responsible to redirect. Sometimes the constraint really does own the capability. Sometimes the correct answer is wait. Fine. But if you never separate what is unavailable from what remains usable, you never get to make that decision. The obstacle makes it for you. That is path captivity. And path captivity is dangerous because it does not look reckless. It looks organized. Everybody waits inside the normal process. Leadership is not obviously doing something wrong. The operation is simply frozen behind one point. That is why judgment matters. The objective is not maximum redirection. The objective is controlled redirection when redirection actually protects the objective. Because the opposite failure is easy to create too. Say you send 20 people to another facility because you refuse to allow anybody to be idle. Wonderful. Now that plant has 20 extra people and no plan. By this point, the scene has already written itself. 20 employees arrive at the second plant like a surprise shipment nobody ordered, and the receiving supervisor is standing there with a clipboard trying to determine whether human resources has started drop shipping labor. Funny picture. Real consequence. The receiving facility now owns confusion it did not create. Its supervisors have to stop and invent assignments. Some people are qualified, some are not. The receiving schedule starts bending around your emergency, and quality is being asked to approve changes after management already moved the people. You did not redirect capability. You redirected disruption. That is wrong. A clean redirection has to protect the receiving path too. You do not save one objective by casually damaging another one. The original obstacle does not earn permission to spread, and that is why one of the strongest questions you can ask in this situation is, what am I about to make somebody else absorb? If I move people, who receives them? If I move production, whose capacity am I consuming? If I move material or inspection, what sequence or control changes? If I redirect the schedule, where does the pressure go? The pressure does not it relocates. That is what has to stay controlled. I have learned to respect temporary solutions because I have made versions of this mistake myself. You get something moving again, and it feels like the problem is under control. The line starts, the backlog starts shrinking, the customer stops calling, the room gets quieter, and your brain says, good, we fixed it. Maybe all you did was create movement. Those are different things. That temporary path may still have no owner. It may have no limit. It may have no return point. The original issue may still be sitting there. The team may be building new habits around something that was never designed to become permanent. Then 3 weeks later, somebody asks why the process works this way, and nobody can explain when the temporary decision became normal. The workaround has achieved seniority. That is why I do not want you to hear obstacle redirection as find a workaround. A workaround can be accidental. A workaround can be undocumented. A workaround can be somebody doing whatever gets them through the shift. Obstacle redirection is more disciplined than that. The operating idea is this. An active obstacle is interfering with the objective. Direct correction is not the best immediate move. Another controlled path may exist that can separate the objective from the obstacle's immediate effect. That does not solve the original problem. It protects the objective from being unnecessarily held hostage by it. And I am going to stay at that recognition level because the full application goes deeper than what belongs in this briefing. You do not need the complete method today to recognize the pattern. You need to see when your operation has unconsciously tied the objective to one path. That can happen with a facility, machine, material lot, inspection point, qualified employee, fixture, or information system. One piece becomes unavailable and the operation starts acting as though everything tied to it became unavailable too. And before somebody turns that into permission to bypass controls, no, that is not what I said. Do not bypass approved systems, quality controls, authorization requirements, safety requirements, or technical procedures because production wants movement. The point is to distinguish what is truly unavailable from what you have merely assumed is unavailable. That distinction requires discipline. The Pierce case makes the same point. We cannot responsibly say Pierce moved complete production orders. The public information does not establish that. We cannot say the redirection recovered a certain number of production hours. We cannot say which roles moved. We cannot reconstruct the internal plan. What we can say is that Pierce reported redirecting production team members to other Pierce facilities while one manufacturing facility had a power interruption. That fact is enough. The people represented capability with a potential different path. The building's condition did not automatically define their entire operating value. There is another useful distinction in the reporting. Pierce also reported roof damage at its aftermarket parts warehouse, and at the time said it did not expect parts availability to be affected. That was an expectation during the response, not proof of every later recovery detail. But the distinction still matters. Physical damage is real. Parts availability is a different question. Power loss is real. Workforce availability is a different question. Facility interruption is real. Customer impact is another question. Something bad happens at the plant, and suddenly the language becomes total. Everything is down. Nothing can move. We cannot do anything. The customer is going to get hit. The schedule is gone. Maybe. But before you speak in absolutes, make sure the operation is actually absolute. That is where CSA matters before you ever get to deepen. CSA improves the read. It helps you identify what changed, what still works, what information is trustworthy, what the objective actually is, and where the interference really sits. Because if the read is weak, deepen does not save you. You can choose the wrong response beautifully. You can move the wrong resource. You can attack something that should not be attacked. You can transfer pressure into another part of the operation and feel productive while you do it. So the first discipline is understanding what is actually happening. Then deepen helps you navigate the problem. Every obstacle should not trigger the same kind of action. Some problems should be avoided before they become active. Some can be postponed because they are real but are not blocking the objective yet. Some need temporary stabilization. Some need direct intervention where the problem sits. And sometimes the obstacle is active, the objective is blocked. But solving that obstacle in place is not the best immediate move. That is where obstacle redirection fits. It helps you recognize that the obstacle and the objective may have become unnecessarily tied together. Now, once you see that, risk becomes part of the conversation too, because every redirection has a cost. Moving labor changes supervision. Moving production changes capacity. Moving material changes sequence. Changing inspection can affect release. Changing the path can change ownership. This is where pro becomes useful. You are not only asking, can I move this? You are asking, what can this decision damage if I do? And then TMC matters because once you decide to redirect something, ownership and communication have to survive the move. Who owns the work? Who owns the original obstacle? Who owns the temporary path? Who knows when it ends? Who has authority to return to normal? Those are not little administrative details. Those are the controls that keep temporary movement from turning into uncontrolled movement. I do not need to walk you through every part of the direct action system here. The point is simpler. Obstacle redirection does not stand alone. It depends on a cleaner read before action. and controlled execution after the decision. Now bring this into your operation. Think about the last time something went down. Machine, utility, line, supplier, system, fixture, quality gate, key employee, production area, shipment path. What happened next? Did your team separate the failed capability from everything connected to it, or did the language become total? We cannot run. We cannot build. We cannot move. We just have to wait. Maybe you really did. I am not arguing with that. But did somebody prove it, or did the operation accept the original dependency without checking whether another responsible path existed? That is what I want you to inspect. And I would not start with some giant analysis. Start with 4 questions. What exactly is blocked? What still works? What am I treating as unavailable only because it is connected to the obstacle? And if I move something, what does the receiving path now have to absorb? Those questions are not the complete obstacle redirection process. They are not supposed to be. They are enough to interrupt one of the most common mistakes people make under pressure. They stop allowing one obstacle to describe the whole system. Now there is another question you need to keep with you. What happens to the original problem after the redirection works? Because success can create neglect. People move. Work moves. The schedule stabilizes. Customers stop escalating. Everybody feels relief. And suddenly nobody is talking about what failed. That is not acceptable. The original obstacle still needs ownership. Utility is down. Restoration still matters. Machine failed. Maintenance still matters. Process failed. Correction still matters. Approval path failed. Governance still matters. Staffing model created the problem. Staffing still matters. Obstacle redirection does not erase the obstacle. It prevents the obstacle from unnecessarily owning the objective while the issue remains under control. That is a different standard from simply going around problems. You are not avoiding accountability. You are separating the immediate objective from a problem that does not necessarily deserve to control it. Sometimes that redirection is one shift, sometimes one order, sometimes one inspection sequence, sometimes one temporary assignment. Sometimes it lasts longer, and the longer it lasts, the more disciplined you need to become, because temporary controls have a bad habit of turning into permanent habits. Manufacturing is full of that. A temporary routing change becomes permanent. A temporary spreadsheet becomes production control. A temporary staffing workaround becomes the staffing model. Everybody inherits the workaround and nobody inherits the reason. That temporary fix is now basically a family heirloom. That is what happens when movement is treated as success without a return point. So leadership has to preserve 2 truths at the same time. The objective should not remain unnecessarily trapped, and the redirection should not become its own uncontrolled system. And that is the balance. That is also why I like the Pierce example. The public facts are simple enough that we do not need to turn this into a disaster management episode. Pierce is not the point. The tornado is not the point. The power grid is not the point. What matters here is the operating pattern. One facility becomes unavailable. A workforce resource connected to that facility is not automatically treated as unavailable. Production team members are redirected while restoration continues. That is enough. You can see the distinction, and you can bring that distinction into your own plant without pretending your operation is Pierce. Maybe your other path is another facility, another work center, a different sequence, qualified labor, or another compatible order. Maybe there is no responsible redirection available at all. That answer is allowed. Obstacle redirection is not a requirement to move. It is, not a requirement to force movement. It is a discipline for recognizing when movement may be possible, and direct correction is not the best immediate response. Sometimes the right answer is no, everything that matters really is behind this constraint. We wait. Good. That is still a better decision if you reached it because you understood the system instead of because the obstacle mentally stopped you. That is the difference between controlled waiting and passive captivity. And that distinction matters in manufacturing because so much of the environment is physically fixed. Machines are bolted to concrete. Utilities run where utilities run. Buildings are where they are. Material has routing. People have qualifications. Production has sequence. You are not working in an environment where everything instantly becomes flexible because leadership wants options. But physical rigidity does not require mental rigidity. You still have to ask what the obstacle actually controls. The machine may control one operation. The facility may control one capability. The material problem may control one product family. The quality hold may control one lot. The system interruption may control one information path, and do not casually give that obstacle authority over everything else. Make it earn the boundary. That is the operating discipline. And when leaders do that well, they protect more than output. They protect decision quality. They keep supervisors from improvising random work, give quality a cleaner boundary, give maintenance room to work the real problem, and protect the receiving operation from uncontrolled load. And they preserve accountability for the original obstacle. That is, control. Not because everything is moving, because the right things are moving for a reason. So when the next obstacle hits your operation, your first question does not automatically have to be, how fast do we eliminate this thing? It might be. Sometimes the problem absolutely requires direct intervention. But before you decide that, ask the more precise question. What part of the objective does this obstacle actually own? Then look at what remains. People, skills, capacity, material, sequence, support, information, time, other facilities, other authorized operating paths. And if another path exists, inspect the cost before you use it. Do not create a second failure because the first one made you impatient. The path failed. The objective did not automatically fail with it. That is the recognition I want you to carry out of this briefing. The obstacle does not have to disappear before the objective can start moving again. When you are ready to go deeper with this tool, go to www.direct-action-system.io/course-directory. Open the course directory, find the course tied to obstacle redirection and deepen, and start there. That is where the deeper application belongs. Thanks for listening to the briefing.